buried the lady, but there's no marker.
Tell me about the lower picture.
Well, that, I suppose Pinson, would he have been the one that took this lower one?
Yeah.
Because it's got the donkey.
Okay, yeah.
And that is Cova, Harry, and Lucy.
Lucy Bill would have been the nearest one here.
Lucy is on the right. Yeah.
In the white.
Also, Norman and Fred, if you all would, touch just a minute as to, we said that Floyd Collins, or that Edmund Turner was kind of the mentor for Floyd Collins, but actually probably what initially started that was Edmund Turner come down here and was buying the artifacts. And so Floyd, probably the first thing that got him interested in caving was he was going in some of the caves and finding artifacts to mail to Edmund Turner, So that's probably what initially got Floyd Collins interested in caving.
Well, that's another good question too. What happened to those artifacts? Some people dug. His theory is that it's in some museum up in New York somewhere. Could be stuck in several boxes in someone's attic up there. Who knows? Well, one of the daughters.
And Fred, also, it may have been that Edmund Turner knew quite a bit about Flint Ridge from Salt's Cave, because he was talking about one day he was caving and he comes up out of a sinkhole.
Right.
To relate.
Yeah. This was after. Actually, it was right prior to the discovery of Great Onyx Cave. Edmund was out crawling around in some holes in the area on some property. He sticks his head up out of the ground and looks around. He didn't recognize the country. He found the nearest farmhouse, and it was Frank Davis. That was your grandfather, great
grandfather's brother.
Brother, yeah. And okay, well that's great. So the story is that he covered that hole up, but he did know that it did go into Great Onyx Cave. Okay. Another thing I mentioned a minute ago, when Edmund was booted out of the cave business, he went to live with Peyton Lee. Fielding Peyton Lee is his name. And he had, like I said, all the survey notes. Well, then he took very sick. Then he went up to the top of the hill and died at One-Eye Joe Lee's place. Well, Peyton kept these papers, okay? And he brought a lawsuit against L.P. Edwards because he knew dang well from these surveys that some of Great Onyx was under his property. And that other lawsuit that you talked about, ownership and all that stuff, well, he was hit for that, so he went down and he used the same lawyers in Glasgow, and they brought suit, and they won that suit. And it was something like $30,000 that they won. And however, it wasn't decided until after Peyton had died. But the rest of the money was distributed to the heirs of Peyton Lee. And there's a woman now that lives out on Toohey Ridge Road, Agnes Carver. And her father was grown, who was a son of Peyton Lee. Okay, and when I first met her, do you ever know what happened to that money? No, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Sorry, I couldn't help it, but she was very interested in the whole thing, anyway. But go ahead.
I was just going to ask, other than Turner Avenue, is there any other names given to features in the park or the caves, tribute to him, or is that's it that you know of?
Turner Avenue goes under his grave, and that's why CRF years ago named Turner Avenue for Edmund Turner. Roger's very much a part of the early formation of CRF when I came here in 1962. Back then, the stories were that Edmund Turner said that Edwards, because Edwards had sort of rooked him, Edwards would never find the biggest part of the cave. He'd never find the biggest part of Great Onyx because there were 7 key rocks. Then pretty soon CRF talks about 7 mummies in a circle there. until you find the 7 mummies in the circle. There's always 7 that you'd never find the way. Edmund Turner told Edwards, you'd never find the way that we found the cave, that we got there. Unless, because only the secret of the 7 key rocks died with Edmund Turner. So that was one of the mysteries of that CRF, some of the jokes we would make and talk about. Let me point out the proximity of things here just for a minute, and we talk about another commercial cave. Ganter Cave was way downstream where Ganter would stop the steamships, the steamboats that were coming up to Mammoth. So you could get off first at Ganter Cave. That was commercialized about 1907. Well, what Dawsey Domes Cave is right across from Cave Island here. Here's Mammoth Cave, and Dawsey Domes Cave is somewhere here that Edmund clearly opened around 1912. Edmund, this further down, was Ganter. So Edmund, you know, there's already a history of on the north side a commercial cave that didn't quite make it. So Edmund Turner opened up one where now the cars are crossing right at the ferry, right here below Mammoth Cave. You come up on the ridge, there's really very little in the northwestern part of Flint Ridge. There are some caves. But here's Great Onyx, and Three Sisters Island, and here's Crystal. Well, Great Onyx was opened in 1915. Floyd's Cave, the first cave Floyd Collins opened, this is documented in the book with Homer Collins and Jack Lehrberger. The first one was called Donkey's Cave or Floyd's Cave, and that's right out here beyond where the Bluegrass Country Club was. Floyd clearly took people there in 1910 and beyond, but then when he broke into Crystal Cave, or he dug there probably a long time before he finally found the main part of the cave, and opened, I guess, in January 1917, actually opened up Crystal Cave, so he no longer needed to take people up the ridge to Floyd's Cave or Donkey's Cave. Then he opened Crystal, and right across the valley, a short walk away, was Great Onyx. So there's certainly a concentration, and earlier in 1897, on the Bluegrass Country Club was where Hazen had opened the Salts Cave commercially. First, salts was shown commercially through the Hazen entrance. So the Hazen entrance, Crystal Cave, Floyd's Cave, Great Onyx, a lot of commercial development right around that area. Small area on the surface.
There's been a little controversy on one of the, on Karen Phillips' website.
Which is up, by the way, for anyone who would like to take a look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was out, well, a few weeks ago, looking at Floyd headstone. I mean, every time you go out there, hey, Floyd, how you doing? And something was funny about that, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Okay. What is wrong with this, about the writing on the stone? And wait a minute, he didn't discover Crystal Cave in January of 1917. It was in September and December. Yeah, of 1917. But on the stone it says January. Wow, wait a minute here, okay. And so we started a big thing on Karen's side about that. And
I don't think we ever resolved.
no, it never did. And the thing is, had Floyd discovered it in January of 1917, you would have bet Edmund Turner would have been along in there with it. It's writing his name everywhere, you know. But there's no signature of Edmund in that case. Yes, sir?
To that nature, maybe. Everything that I've ever seen says that Great Onyx was discovered in 1915.
No.
But I have seen the Floyd Collins signature in there that says 1914. Anybody care to elaborate any at all?
Chances are that maybe they meant it's going to be open to the public in 1915. Because it was known about before. You know, it had been founded before 1915.
This is something you have to look at. For example, we find in Mammoth Cave the signature of Alfred. Alfred was a contemporary of Stephen Bishop. He was one of the slaves owned by the Cron family. And the Cron family letters indicate that he had screwed up in Washington DC and was being sent back to Louisville. Apparently drinking liquor or something, something that they didn't approve of. Well, in Mammoth Cave, there's Alfred, 1820. So then you say, what is this? Well, that was probably the year he was born. I mean, that would fit. The rest of it doesn't fit. So, every date you need to look at with a fine-tooth eyeglass. For example, the birthday of Floyd Collins on his tombstone is wrong. It's really in April, not July, that he was born, according to family records. So you don't ascribe a lot to the date.
The question that came up when we were thrashing that around was, who had the tombstone engraved? And according to court records, it was the family that had it erected out there. And that's what puzzled us, which is like on the birthday. They should have known when he was born, more than anyone. So I at first, until I found out that the family had it inscribed, suspected Dr. Thomas, something in that, even with the January date. But we could never arrive at a logical reasoning as to why they would want to put January when 1917 in December was when he was supposed to discover it.
Part of the controversy is that one date may be when supposedly, I mean, he was looking for caves. He'd already opened Floyd's cave. Not many people went to it. You had a long, you didn't go to the Collins house. There was a lane from out beyond where the Job Corps camp used to be, a lane all the way to the end of the ridge, and it's probably a tough road to get there to walk down the hill and see Floyd's cave. But Floyd, the story was that he found the trap, the woodchuck trap, and found the cave. Well, that doesn't mean that's when he really broke through the cave. He may have been digging from January 1918 and finally broke through and found the Grand Canyon, the huge part of the cave. He may have actually found that on December 17th, and that's one of the dates where that comes from. They don't say necessarily that he discovered the cave, but that he sort of broke through into the main part of the cave on December 17th. They used to tell it that way, and his lantern was going out. He got as far as the Valley of Decision, should he go on and turn back. And some of that are people that wrote the caves beyond and wrote some of the history, and how good a historian they were.
Well, in Homer's book, he describes Floyd's discovery of Crystal Cave as finding a stack of rocks that looked like a book, an open book. Now, you don't know whether this is an open book this way or an open book that way, but that he went in a very tight crawlway and found the Grand Canyon. Well,